Hi, guys. Welcome back to my Relaxed English podcast. Today is going to be a great episode because we're going to talk about life differences in the USA and life in Canada. And I really wanted to choose this topic because I know a lot of my students are thinking about moving to one of these countries, and maybe you are as well. So I hope that this video can give you some help as to what country to choose and why. And we're also going to talk about some phrasal verbs that you can use to talk about moving to a new country and some of the challenges you might deal with. So, before we get into the topic, of course, I just want everyone to know, in case you don't know, I'm Canadian and I was born and raised here, but I do love visiting the United States on vacation. I've been to New York, Fort Lauderdale, I think, yeah, in Florida, and also Orlando, Florida. I've been to a couple of the states in the north, like Maine and New Hampshire, but I've had a really good time in the US. So, the first question I wanted to ask you first, before we begin about the main topics, is why is Canada not a part of the United States? Have you ever wondered that? Why is it Canada is a different country than the US? Well, to be honest, even a lot of Americans and Canadians don't know this. Of course, it depends on if you're a history person or you're not a history person. So the reason why is because, well, both countries were controlled by the British at one point, but of course, the Americans decided to become independent of the British very early, so they rejected them. But Canada still was a part of the British Empire. And even today, we have a monarchy. We have King Charles as the King of Canada, even though we are an independent country. But that's the reason why both of these places are different, even though we have a lot of similarities. We do have a little few differences, as we're going to talk about in today's video. So let's get started. What I did is I asked ChatGPT to give me a list of the differences between the countries, and then I will discuss it from my opinion to tell you if it's true or not, if I agree with it, and we will take it from there. So let's go with the first point. It says culture and people. People are friendly in the United States, but very busy. Life feels fast. But in Canada, it said people are polite and calm. Life is a bit slower. I guess that can be true. Most Americans, in my opinion, come from big cities. We think about like Philadelphia, New York, Los Angeles, all of the cities with millions and millions of people. So maybe this is why they seem to be more of a rush in their life. It seems to be that's why their life feels fast. But I think in Canada, most of us live in smaller cities with probably a million or less than a million people, except Toronto, of course. Now, Toronto, or as we say, Toronto, is for us basically another American city. For like me from a small city, we view Toronto as like another part of the US because it's busy and life definitely feels fast. But of course, I think there are Americans who are very polite and calm and relaxed. They come from the countryside. But I think in the US, most Americans you might meet come from big cities. I guess it's the same even with big countries like India or China. So here's another point. It said that in Canada, strangers often say sorry, even if it's not their fault. This is true. This is true. Sometimes, if I'm even in a public place and someone accidentally hits me, I might say sorry to them, even though I didn't do anything. I know that sounds a little strange, right? But I realize that to my students, I say sorry like 2 or 3 times during a lesson, maybe because I was late or because I have to go. I always say sorry, I have to go. But I'm not sure if many Americans would be using sorry as much. So that's definitely something that we use as Canadians that is different. Now, if you move to the US, adjusting to the people, oh, of course, or Canada, adjusting to the people might be something that you find very difficult. So let's learn a phrasal verb that means adjusting to something or adjusting to people, and that is the phrasal verb fit in. So here's an example. It can be hard to fit in when you first move to a new country. What about you if you live in the US or Canada? Are you finding it hard to fit in? So just think about a circle and you try to get in the circle. So you try to fit inside. So do you find it hard to fit in at work? Have you always found it hard to fit in with people? I know I have. And it can be a little difficult to fit in with Canadians, even for me, because I would agree that a lot of Canadians sometimes they only have 2 or 3 good friends for their whole life. And they don't really, in general, they don't want to have more than those 2 or 3 groups of friends that they hang out with. So it can be very difficult to fit in with them. As I said, even for me, it's difficult to make a lot of friends in Canada. But in my wife's country, in the Philippines, I found it very easy to talk to people and be friends with a lot of different people. So I'm not sure if the US is the same, but from my experience, my American friends are very friendly and they welcome you into their group very warmly. Okay. So I hope you can use that phrasal verb fit in. Maybe you can pause the video and think about how you could use it yourself in your life. Let's talk about the healthcare and the cost of living. This is a very good question because a lot of you worry about what if I have to go to the hospital or what if I have a problem. So basically, in Canada, the healthcare is free, but sometimes you must wait. That's what the AI said. I agree 100%. Of course, things like a blood test or a simple procedure, you don't really need to wait that long. Maybe it's just 1 week. Um, but I noticed that in some cases, I'll give you an example. I once needed a bigger procedure or a bigger process that needed to be checked. I had a problem with my kidneys. You know that organ in the in the bottom part here. So I had to go and get an ultrasound. And it took me, I think it was 6 months before I could get the ultrasound. So I went to the doctor, and 6 months passed before I went to the hospital and I could get the ultrasound. You have to wait for a letter to come in the mail, and it tells you when your ultrasound or your procedure is going to be. And I know my grandmother gets a lot of those letters many months in advance before her procedure. So, yes, you do have to wait sometimes. We don't have private health care in Canada, but the US does. They have some of the best hospitals in the world, and the AI said it's very expensive if you don't have insurance. It's 100% true. One of my American friends told me that you need to have insurance for every month you have to pay an amount towards the insurance, and it can be around 200, I think, US dollars maybe is the average. If I'm wrong, and please correct me below in the comments. But that can be a lot in 1 year, especially if you have other things like car insurance, dental insurance, glass or eye insurance, glasses. It can be expensive. Living costs, big cities in both countries are expensive. 100% yes, I would agree with that. I think that the rent, especially in the west of Canada and the US, like from Vancouver, Seattle, Los Angeles, in California, it seems like the west is the most expensive places to live, but also Toronto and New York is just, even for me, I don't think I can live there because I might need to have 2 or 3 YouTube channels to keep surviving and 2 jobs. So I think that it would be difficult for me. Or maybe I could study to be a software engineer and get a better salary, but that's difficult too. So, in this theme about the cost of living, here's a phrasal verb that we use very often. It's get by. Get by. And what get by means is to kind of succeed in life. So, you might succeed, you might have like $5,000 extra every month, or you might have zero, but you still get by. Okay. You still continue with your life. So here's an example sentence. In some cities, it is very difficult to get by with a low salary. That's very true. Here's another example from my life. I'm finding it very difficult nowadays to get by with all of the increases of prices in Canada. And I should mention that the price of food and other things is getting a little expensive at the moment. But we are surviving. We, of course, can't. I used to go to maybe McDonald's or restaurants like every second day in my wife's country in the Philippines because it was so cheap. But in Canada, I mean, maybe once a week I go to get some takeout at the fast food restaurant. I shouldn't be; it's unhealthy. But restaurants, like sit down dining restaurants, I just don't go almost at all, because it's going to cost over 100, maybe $200. But maybe I should treat my wife more to some restaurants. I think I should do that. So it's getting a little difficult to get by in Canada and the US. So, what about work and education? We'll talk about that. Here's what the ChatGPT said: the USA has many jobs, big companies, and more competition. Canada has good jobs too, but easier for immigrants to start a new life. That's a good question. I don't know much about this because I did not immigrate to the US, but I think that could be true. I think that it's a lot of my students who live in the US, they say that it's kind of easy to get some job somewhere. But in Canada, we have fewer people, we have maybe fewer businesses in the small cities. It might be difficult for you to get a job, especially if you're like an IT worker or some other speciality. It could be a little difficult. But let's talk about education. It says here Canada is usually cheaper, but the USA has famous universities. Okay, that's true. I think that it's expensive in both places. Many of my students, they go to university and they have to pay like 30,000 Canadian dollars. It's just very expensive. And the US, I can imagine, is very expensive as well. So I don't think that education is cheap in both places. But a lot of my friends, I know that they take cheaper courses, like maybe some college course or an online course, like what I did with teaching. I did many online courses to learn how to teach. So a lot of us choose the cheaper education, but it seems like a lot of immigrants choose the expensive option, which is, I think, challenging. Here's our next third phrasal verb about expenses of life, about, after you get an education and you get a job, you start to settle down. Okay. So settle down means to kind of relax in life and start working, maybe start having a family. When you're young, like 18, 19, maybe you start studying something else or you get a job and you're not settled down yet. But usually later, when you're 24, 25, maybe you choose to get married or um, have a permanent job and you stay at the same place. You don't travel around as much. That's what settle down means. So I could use it as a sentence about my life. I started to settle down when I got married and I became an English teacher. And now even though I lived in the Philippines, I settled down in the Philippines for 7 years. I decided to move to Canada and settle down again. So try to use this phrasal verb in your life. We got one more topic I want to discuss is the lifestyle and daily life. The USA has very busy cities, lots of entertainment, and big portions of food. I agree. I remember in the US, the food was enough for two people. It was a serving for one person, but it was enough for two. Amazing. I love it. Um, I know it's unhealthy, but it's our culture. And in Canada, we have more nature, many people, and we enjoy outdoor activities. It's true. I agree that a lot of cities are almost like parks where you can go outside in the evening. You see a lot of people walking their dogs, going for a walk. On the weekends, they like to do hiking or go to the park. Um, but me, I like to go to the shopping mall and watch videos on YouTube on my free time. I think that it's very relaxing for me. People are different, but in general, I think Canada has a lot of nature and other things. And about sports, we all like the same sports, but I think that in Canada, people love hockey a lot. And in the USA, they love American football for the majority of people. And I want to talk about food briefly just because I love food. This is not from the AI, it's just my idea. Um, I think that we eat the same things, but I noticed that I think maybe in Canada we eat a lot of food from the immigrants, um, but in the U.S. they could be more focused on their own cuisines, their own dishes. But the US is also a country of immigrants, so I think they eat a lot of things. But the US has more cuisine or culture. Like they have the Southern cooking, they have the New Mexico cooking, they have New York restaurants that created the New York food dishes, New York pizza. There's the Nashville hot chicken. If you don't know what that is, oh, it's great if you like spicy. So I think America has a lot of variety of foods, but in Canada we have historically a French and British and of course Aboriginal cuisine diet. But nowadays we eat a lot of Indian food, Mexican food, Chinese food. We eat everything. So that's the situation with food. So that's all for today's podcast, friends. I hope that you enjoyed it. To review, we've got the three phrasal verbs. We've got it was fit in, get by, and settle down. Try to use them when you talk to your English teacher or during your English classes. And the final question I want to ask is, what do you think? Would you rather live in the United States or would you rather live in Canada? Which one feels better for you? Which one do you agree with more? Maybe you can write some comments below and I'll love to read them anytime. So that's all for today's episode. I hope that you like the video and subscribe to my channel. And thanks. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.